begin and end, his stories.
You keep talking about the West. What do you know of it?
I've heard such tales roll. Great towns and cities, and treasures, hoards of gold and silver, and a new god.
I had a character who was very curious.
That's why we should sail west.
He needed to prove to me and then to the audience that he was someone worth following. So he had to want to go somewhere. And by the same token, someone was going to want to stop him. So that was drama.
Earl Haraldson summons you to attend him in the Great Hall.
Okay, so that's a good start. Where's he going to go?
We would sail west to raid and to colonize. That was your dream, Ragnar. But believe me, I would be happy enough just to have my name linked with yours when the poets tell the story of how we Norsemen sailed west and discovered new worlds.
It's very easy to think about Scandinavia as being made up of isolated rural villages, small farmsteads, and imagining people living up in the mountains and not being part of the real world. But we know that's not true. By the end of the 8th century, we're starting to see evidence of these places being tied into a bigger network. There's clearly a very interconnected world which comes together at places like Ribe.
Ribe was a very special place in the Viking Age. It seems to be the first place where something that we would call a town was founded in Scandinavia.
Okay, so this is west over here, Morten?
Yes, you can barely see the ocean now, but the North Sea is about 6 kilometers in that direction.
Right.
The river is meandering out, opening up towards the big world and the more civilized Western Europe. In Viking times, we had the marketplace over there. Lots of small houses, lots of fire, lots of smoke, of course. You should imagine the Viking ships going all the way up here.
So this is a really kind of central place in the whole structure of the area in
Yes.
terms of trade and contact.
When you wanted to buy certain artifacts, you had to come all the way to Ribe, no matter whether you lived in Sweden or in Norway, because it was really the only place to get those artifacts in the 8th and early 9th century.
So what would this have looked like in the Viking Age, do you think?
This was marshlands with the river running through it. Then you must imagine the long ships rowing up the river. In Ribe was one of the few places where you could meet the traders coming from abroad.
And we think this is where the main Viking and 8th century marketplace was.
Yes.
So how do we know that?
We know that from excavations, so it's all archaeology. One of the big excavations in the 1970s was done just on the way up here towards the art museum. All the artifacts coming from all the specialized crafts were found in huge numbers. So it was quite obvious that this was not just a normal agrarian settlement, this was some sort of trading site, trading town.
A really big kind of commercial centre.
Yes.
So you really can't understand the Viking Age without Ribe, can you? It's kind of central to understanding that. People talk, objects move, people start to see and think about what's over the horizon. The coming together of trade and craftsmen that we see at Ribe is the first step. The Viking Age starts with Ribe.
Ribe in the 8th century was unique. It's a bridge between worlds.
So this is Western European stuff, most of it. Both more everyday products, but also luxury items.
This is very fascinating to see this. This is an almost complete cornerstone.
We don't have good stone for making cornerstones in Denmark. These were brought in from the Rhine area.
The blue glass there might come from
Could
England.
be English, yeah. It's the sort of thing you find in Anglo-Saxon England as well.
Yeah, so like this piece here, that could be an English glass.
So here are some of the beads on display, which we have excavated on the marketplace. And we have the oldest ones, those from the early 8th century here at the bottom. And then we see the later ones up to early 9th century at the top here.
You're almost reading the dynamics of the whole settlement and the people here and the trade just through the beads.
Yes, I entirely like these in particular, with these patterns. And they're produced here.
Yes. Those are local products. Later on, we see a change and they start to import finished beads from the Middle East.
So how do we know these are from the Middle East?
Well, they're found all over Eurasia, really. You can find them in East Africa as well. It's a global event that takes place just around the time that we call the beginning of the Viking Age. Yeah, so in a sense, we see the spark of the Viking Age something becomes available which makes the distant horizon a lot more interesting.
And accessible.
Yes.
You could ask, how does trading turn into raiding? I think that's probably the wrong way to phrase it, because we know that raiding is going on everywhere and has been for a long time. What really changes is the horizon.
I want to send bigger raiding parties to the west. Yes, to plunder, but also to explore new lands. We can go west, across the Great Sea to a place called England, to bring back such plunder that you have never seen before.
I think the Viking Age is a thing which has a tipping point, and there must have been a reason why, at that particular time, that change does happen. This could be explained in terms of the power gains that are going on in Scandinavia at that time. If you were able to take the treasures that were stored in the monastery in Lindisfarne or Ironare or other famous places, bring that home to Norway, you would become the most generous chieftain of all that power game, attracting others to follow your course instead of trying to overcome you.
It's about wealth, but it's also about power, and power comes from a kind of a mystique. Being able to tell stories and create a sort of enchantment based on where you've been.
There should be treasure.
If you had a piece of jewellery which very clearly wasn't from a Scandinavian context, and you can tell they look very different, that would mean something. That would have stories attached to it. It would be the sort of thing which you use to tell about your past exploits. These stories would be passed down from father to son, I'm sure. I don't think we should understate the romance or even the magic of bringing in a piece of silver that's come from Ireland or from England rather than from down the road. These items do have a meaning.
Ragnar, we know you sailed west across the open ocean and found land and plunder. So, we salute and praise you.